Hello and welcome back. I'm filming these in the same day. That's why I'm wearing the same shirt as I was in the last video. So here's what we're doing today. We are gonna make cinnamon rolls from scratch. I'm pretty sure I've made a video about how to make the canned cinnamon rolls taste better, and the canned cinnamon rolls are excellent, but if you want to take things up a notch, if you want to make these at home from scratch, you absolutely can, because it only requires some basic baking ingredients that you probably already have in your pantry: eggs, flour, butter, milk, some yeast, cinnamon, and some icing. And you can make the icing like cream cheese icing, or you can make a basic icing that's just powdered sugar and some milk. So we're gonna make homemade cinnamon rolls from scratch today. I'm gonna attempt to do this as easy as possible. Since we are using yeast, they will need to rise. It will take a little bit more time, but they're gonna be delicious. So let's get to it. Okay, so in my stand mixer, I'm adding 1 cup of warm milk to the bowl, and I'm gonna add a teaspoon of sugar, and then I'm gonna add 2 1/4 teaspoons of dry active yeast. The milk needs to be warm because it's going to help the yeast bloom. I don't have a temperature for the milk. I know there's some, recipes and stuff that you have to have a special temperature. I just warmed it up in the microwave for 30 seconds. You want to let the yeast bloom for about 10 minutes. And then you're going to add some sugar, some melted butter. You're going to add 2 eggs. And that is it. You're going to turn your mixer on. I just use the dough hook the entire time. It does take a little bit longer for the dough hook to mix up the liquid ingredients, but I just didn't want to make another attachment for my KitchenAid dirty. So I stopped the mixer, and now I'm adding 4 cups of flour. You want to add 4 cups of flour, and then you want to have another 1/2 cup-ish of flour ready to go, just in case you see that your dough needs it. So if your dough is coming together in the mixer and it just looks too wet, just sprinkle in another little bit of flour, maybe a tablespoon at a time. Just a little bit until the dough gets to the consistency that you want it at. And so I'm just using my dough hook to mix this together, and I'm just watching it. I don't know why I was watching it, but I just was. You don't have to watch it. And then I noticed that there was a lot of flour on the sides, so I'm scraping down the sides to make sure that it all gets incorporated. After about 5 to 7 minutes, the dough started to look like this. It was kneading the dough really well. So I got a bowl out and I sprayed it with a little bit of oil. Excuse me. I got out my plastic wrap. I'm just preparing to move this dough into the bowl so that it can rise. You could just leave it in the KitchenAid bowl. I had to make this recipe again because some things just weren't quite right. I needed to tweak it some. And the first time I made it, I did just leave it in the bowl just because I thought that would be easier. But it was actually very difficult to get out of the bowl. So I would recommend going ahead, putting it in a new bowl. And I attempted to use this bench scraper to get it out, and that was very difficult. The dough is very sticky. It's real stretchy, and that is good. That's what you want. And it got everywhere. All over my fingers. This part's messy. But you just, have to do the best you can. That's all you can do, and that's what we do here on Loaves and Dishes. We just do the best we can. Okay, so I'm covering the bowl in plastic wrap, and I'm going to stick this in my oven. My oven is not on, but I did turn my oven on 350 for about 3 minutes so that it got warm in there, and then I just let it sit in there with the oven turned off for about 1.5 hours. That's about how long it took for me for the dough to double in size. I wanted to punch it down like you see all those videos of people doing, and that was a mistake. It got all over my hands. Okay, so I'm going to sprinkle some flour out on my countertop. And then I am going to get this dough out, and I'm going to plop it right on that flour.
Probably would have been easier just to dump the bowl over, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. And then the dough was really soft, so I just kept messing with it for a second. I got my rolling pin out, and I'm gonna roll the dough out. You want to roll your dough out until it's like a 1/4 inch thick. And it is easiest if it's in sort of a square shape. It'll be easier to roll the cinnamon rolls up, and you'll have less waste if you can kind of keep it in a square shape. It is quite difficult to do because, you know, things want to be a circle, but you know, you can make it work. It's also very easy to like spread this out so that it's enormous. Here I am just sort of correcting the shape a little bit. Okay, so now I have some melted butter, and I'm just going to paint the top of my cinnamon roll with this. When I made this before, I did the technique where you make like a paste with your butter and your cinnamon and your sugar, and that did not work for me because then the butter melted while it was baking and all of the cinnamon and sugar came out. So this method worked a lot better for me. You can do either or. If you want to make a paste out of everything and like measure out your sugar and stuff, you can absolutely do that. But this worked really well where I just kind of painted the top with some butter and then sprinkled on brown sugar. This is about like 1.5 cups to 2 cups of brown sugar. You could do more or less if you wanted to. You could also use dark brown sugar if you wanted to use dark brown sugar. So I sprinkled that on, and now I'm going to take my cinnamon and I'm going to do a pretty heavy dusting of cinnamon. It's about 2 tablespoons total, but I wanted a real cinnamony flavor for the cinnamon rolls. So I did a pretty heavy dusting. And this was easier, I thought, because I didn't have to like make any more tools dirty, really. Another bowl, to mix up the paste in. So now I am very carefully rolling the cinnamon rolls up. You want to make sure that you get a nice tight roll, as tight as possible with a dough like this. That'll make a nice pretty cinnamon roll. Now I'm taking some string, just some thread that I took from my sewing machine. Not used thread, it was fresh thread. And I am cutting the cinnamon rolls. You can use a knife. If you use a knife, you want to be really careful, and using a knife can mess up the kind of cross section that you get when you cut a cinnamon roll. It can, make it look distorted, but if you don't care about that, absolutely use a knife. If you don't have any string laying around, do what you got to do. And I'm cutting these so they're about like 1 inch thick, 1 inch to 1.5 inches. Now I've got my baking tray, my baking pan, sheet thing, dish, and I sprayed it with some oil, and I'm putting the cinnamon rolls in there. Now the cinnamon rolls have to rise again for about 30 minutes. They're going to rise again. They're going to double in size roughly. And these are, they're not fast. They are quite time consuming, but they are delicious. So you want to let them rise for about 30 minutes. And then after that, you're going to bake them at 375 for 25 to 27 minutes. If you want them a little gooier, go a little less on the baking time. If you want them more well done, go a little more on the baking time. So now I'm making an icing. I've got about 3 tablespoons of softened, like room temperature butter. And then I've got about 2 cups of powdered sugar, some vanilla extract, and then I added a couple tablespoons of milk. You want to eyeball it you want to take your time with the milk. You don't necessarily want to eyeball it unless you've made an icing like this a million times. But you want to do 1 tablespoon at a time so that you know exactly, so that you don't add too much. I like this icing because it's really easy to make, and you don't really have to measure stuff, because if you put in too much liquid, just add a little more powdered sugar. And if you don't put in enough, if it's too thick, it's not mixing up, just put in a little more liquid. It's pretty simple to make. It did take a long time to whisk up that butter. I wish I'd just put it in my stand mixer, because then I could have just creamed the butter. But I was like, I'm just going to do this by hand. I wouldn't recommend it. I whisked this for like 5 minutes aggressively. And once you have that all mixed up and your cinnamon rolls are out of the oven, you want to let them cool off just a little bit before you pour this icing on. And then pour the icing over the top, and they are just about done. There they are. These are delicious. They're super soft, fluffy. It's a really great classic cinnamon roll. If you want to see more recipes, be sure to check out Loaves and Dishes, and thanks for watching.